I guess I'll just start with this, the quarterback stuff. How are you divvying up the quarterback reps this spring? I guess how did Jay's baseball play into it, and how are those two guys doing, Tony and Jay, to this point in the spring?
Right, great question. So the way we structure it is we try to get 10 reps in every 5-minute segment, and we're repping 3 groups most of the time. So we split it up. We start there, and then at the top with the first group when Jay is available to practice with us. And this was the first week that he was able to get 2 full practices around his baseball schedule, because baseball is a priority, and it's really based off of his availability to pitch that week. So will determine how many throws that we get in practice. And so he was able to go Tuesday, Thursday with live reps with us, and he looked good. Throw the ball well. So what we would do is we would alternate those 4 reps with the first group each time between him and Tony, and then you got Calandria and Grady. That'll kind of split up those second team reps, and then Delaney and Davis will kind of work third team and then go up into the second team. So we really kind of roll those 4 quarterbacks through those bottom 6 plays, and then we leave those top 4 plays to divvy up between Jay and Tony when Jay's available. And then when Jay's not with us in practice, and then we'll throw Calandria, we'll throw Grady, and we'll throw Delaney and all those guys in there, just trying to make it as equitable as possible. So that they see the different looks, so we can get a true evaluation. And I'm pleased with the progress of those guys in particular, and the team overall, and got good competition, had a good day today, pretty balanced. It was situational scrimmage stuff, first and second down, some third down, some field zone stuff, and when you look at the result, it was pretty balanced. Defense won their fair share and the offense won their fair share. So pleased overall with the progress. Excited to just continue to come out here with these guys, because they have unbelievable energy each day.
And then wanted to ask you one about the defense too. Hearing some of the guys talk to this past week, it sounds like they're pretty confident. You guys have enough leadership defensively to continue and build on kind of what AJ and Nick had done for you guys last year. Do you sense that? And I guess what indicators show you that there's enough leadership defensively?
Well, overall, the leadership is in a different place from last year, and as I said, man, it was a tough transition, because you had some guys that had been here for a long time and were used to a certain way, and brought in some transfer guys that wanted to lead, but just were kind of finding their place in the locker room. And so what you're seeing on the defensive side of the ball, you have Paul and Cam that are returning guys. You got Chico, you got Aaron. You got Ben Smiley, you got Jock Carter, so a lot of the veteran guys are on the defensive line. And then you got James Jackson, who was a guy that played a lot of football, and then Ahern's back. And then you got the Antonio Clary, you got Cohen King, so you got most of those guys back on defense. So naturally they would have confidence. And you look at the progress that they made last year, just overall from a production standpoint, from a statistics standpoint. So yeah, they're going to walk out here with a little bit of confidence right now. But I tell you what, it's been good to see these young offensive linemen accept the challenge of going against those guys. So just in the locker room, with the accountability overall with the team, the way the locker room looks post-practice, pre-practice, the discipline to make sure that you check in for your pre- and post-practice nutrition lets me know that the leadership is definitely headed in the right direction. Because I've always said, and I've told them all along, the best teams are led from the locker room up. So if the coaches are the ones that are having to drive the accountability, then obviously we got a long way to go. But I don't sense that with this football team overall.
Hey, Coach, it's Mike from Richmond. I wanted to ask you, you're fairly thin at corner despite all the guys you bring back that are defensive backs.
Right.
Cohen mentioned that he's been working there. How do you feel about the corner position, and how many guys do you see as being versatile enough to help you in both?
Great question, Mike. Obviously, I think in this next window, we probably need to go and see, can we find an available corner to give us some depth, because you lost your top 2 guys with all your production. But Will Simpkin is a guy that's kind of jumped back in and today, and he was out a couple days with a hip flexor, but now he practiced today. And prior to him being down with his hip flexor, he was looking impressive. And then the guys that are versatile that we're having roll in at corner is, you got Aiden Ryan, who's a guy that can play some corner for us. Cohen King can play some corner for us, and we'll get Elijah Gaines back. That's probably a big hit to the depth right now, because Elijah Gaines is out. Micah Gaffney is a guy that's stepping up. Dave is a guy that's versatile, that can play. Dave Herard, he can play corner, he can play safety, mostly working at safety. And then the transfer, Tavon Kyle, has been out there playing corner. So really, it's just a matter of developing from an experience standpoint. So I think we definitely got able bodies. We just got to evaluate them, develop them here during spring ball, so that by the time we get to the fall, we're ready to roll.
And schematically, a year ago, you had AJ and Fentrell, who were two of the better man-to-man cover guys in the ACC. I know Rudd's not big on just leaving guys on an island and throwing the sink at people, but does it change kind of your thought process when you don't have that experience at corner in terms of maybe how you want him to call a defensive game?
You know, we'll determine that once we get into the fall, because, you know, right now it's just evaluating to see what we have. So in the spring ball, on both sides of the ball, you put in just the nuts and bolts, the core of your system, defensively, offensively, and special teams wise. And as we get into fall camp and get closer to the season, then we'll determine, because each team has its own identity, each offense has its own identity, each defense has its own identity, and then your job as a coach is to make sure that you try and work around that identity as you build your scheme and as you get into your play calling once we get to the fall. So to answer that question right now, that's not the emphasis. That's not what we're focusing on. What we're focusing on is developing guys within the core system, and then as we get into fall camp, as the battles really resolve themselves, and then we'll determine schematically what direction we want to go. But philosophically, philosophically, we're not going to change, what we do philosophically, but schematically there may be some tweaks based off of your personnel, and that's consistent with any unit, whether it's offense, defense, or special teams.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, Coach. Coming in after your first scrimmage, where do you evaluate the offense and how comfortable these guys are? Obviously, there's some new pieces and some confirmed positions, and obviously Tony Muskett and Jay kind of taking over under center for his first 2 games.
Right. As I said, I'm pleased with the progress. In a different place than where we were last spring. And in fairness to those guys, last spring it was completely new. It's new to Tony, but obviously Tony's played a lot of football. So when you think about a guy like him, it's kind of like a free agent quarterback. He's done what we've done. He just has to transition the terminology. And he's played a lot of football, so he's been a starter for multi-years and played at a high level where he was at. So it's been a pretty easy transition. And Malik, same way. Malik's a veteran guy. He's come in. Kobe, same way. Uganda, they're just transitioning the terminology. So overall, I've been pleased with just the general operation. We've been able to operate both the no huddle, the huddle calls with minimal procedural errors. Now we got technique work to do at all positions, but overall, I've just been pleased with the consistency. And I saw some big plays today. There were some big catches, some big runs, the ability to move the ball, even in a situational scrimmage. So overall, just pleased with the progress that we're making offensively with the addition of the transfers and then all the guys that are coming back. They really put in the work. We've done a better job, I would say, from a coaching standpoint of making sure that we're not throwing too much at them too fast and doing a good job of, if we don't have it down the way that we expect to have it down or we need to have it down, then let's not move on. Where I think last spring we probably were, as I said, we're a little overzealous, just trying to get the system in and moved a little bit too fast.
My next question actually was going to be, this is the second spring in Virginia. Yep. How different has this spring gone for you, and what kind of things have you been doing differently that you've seen more progress now?
I think the thing that's different is because of the guys' exposure to the system on both sides of the ball and the amount of guys coming back. Man, we can have a lot more fun. We can have a lot more fun just playing football. Obviously still coaching the details, but we don't have to coach just the fundamentals of practice, about getting on the field, getting off the field, practicing fast. The guys understand the philosophy around the way that we practice with the tempo, the speed, the efficiency. So those things I'm not having to chase down like I did last year. And in fairness to those guys, last year was all new to them. It was a completely different structure. So these guys have now been through it for a spring, a fall, and now they're into their second spring. So the big thing is, man, we can have fun. We can really coach the fundamentals and the details of what we're doing because we don't have to coach those other things. So now it's the transition of, as I told the guys 2 days ago, it's we got to move from the what we're doing to the how and the why, and you're starting to see that we can focus a little bit more on the how and the why of what we're doing in all areas of the football team.
Thank you.
Hey, Tony, looking at last year, Malachi obviously finished the year with that touchdown against Pitt. Where have you seen his progress this spring now that, you've lost a lot of the veteran guys in that room?
Right. So first of all, he looks great. When you come out to practice, man, he looks imposing. just physically. So you can see he's in a better place. He's been able to really focus on his strength and conditioning while he was nursing that foot back to full speed. His confidence is at a high level. Man, he's making plays. He's making the routine plays, but he's also making the contested plays. He's looking like a big time receiver that we all believe that he can be. And so, man, it's fun to watch him. And then he comes out here with a smile every single day. He loves to be coached, man. So you can push him, you can challenge him, and then you see once you challenge him and you push him, man, he responds. He takes that information and he goes applies it to the next rep. So physically he looks great, and then he's transitioning and making the plays and playing very confident. And he's playing into the boundary too, where he's going to be challenged with press coverage and roll coverages and things of that nature.
And you talked about going into year 2, just having more fun with it now that guys kind of have a grasp of the system. Where are you as far as how comfortable you are with just kind of running the program and kind of all the things that come along with that?
I'm becoming more comfortable with every day. Is a new day and has challenges of its own. So I'm better at just absorbing whatever issue may come my way. And as a head coach, there's not a day that goes by that there's not something that has to be addressed. But also too being able to balance the things that got to be addressed, and also recognizing and acknowledging the guys for the things that they are doing well. And that's part of the fun that we're having is now I'm able to kind of, because again I'm not having to coach the core fundamentals as much. Man, I can celebrate the guys that are making an impact in the community, in front of the team, and we're a little bit more comfortable with each other, so then we can be sporadic and I can call Josh Rollins up and his teammates don't know it, but one of his teammates sent me a text message and said, "Hey coach, Josh Rollins knows every song word by word for the Hamilton soundtrack. This is his favorite song. How about make him get up and sing it in front of the team?" And so last year, I wouldn't have been able to do that because the guys, weren't as comfortable. But now, spontaneous, I can call Josh up, and you know what? The team has a good time, right? When he's in there singing, what was it? Something Theodosia. So he's singing it word for word. And he's trying to hit all the high notes, the low notes, and you know what? His teammates are embracing that, and that's what being a team is about. So those are the type of fun things that we can do, and then also too, when I'm able to address, the issues, they understand the perspective that I'm coming from. Is man, I'm just trying to teach you. It's nothing. It's not personal. This is just things that we need to know as a human being, as a man, and as a football player. And so it's not personal. And when we accept those, that coaching, and I tell them too, I get coached too. My coaches challenge me, the players challenge me, and so we're just a lot more comfortable with each other. And now they understand kind of my intent, and they believe that my intent is to support them, to help them grow. But they also understand that there has to be structure, there has to be discipline, and when those things are out of order, we got to get them back in order.
Hey, Hank, I'll let you go next, but we got about 3 or 4 minutes, and then Coach needs to get up to his office.
Okay. Tony, I'm guessing you don't have a lot of experience with sharing your potential starting quarterback with baseball. How did you figure out how to navigate that? And was there someone you talked to that has been through that?
So it's been myself and Coach O'Connor with a lot of communication. And first and foremost, what I told him is, Jay, that young man has just as bright a future in baseball as he does in football. And I wouldn't want to stand in the way of that. So, it started with just, okay, what does baseball need from him? What do we need from a football standpoint? What's the priority? And then just balancing the schedule. So from week to week, Sunday is kind of when we determine what his schedule is going to be. And this week was more football because the baseball schedule allowed with his availability and his off day. Whereas next week it'll probably be more towards baseball. But I don't want to get in the way of his ability to do two things: to help the baseball team, but then also position himself as an opportunity to potentially be a pro down the road. So it's really just been communication. And Coach Oak has been great. He's been awesome. His staff has been awesome. Jay's been awesome. And it's been fun to kind of watch a guy do that, because I always admired that growing up, man. Watching Dion, watching Bo, watching Frank, watching Brian Jordan, watching all those guys do it, man. I was a fan because I wanted to do both when I was Jay's age. But no, not a ton of experience. But it's really just been Coach O'Connor and myself looking at the schedule weekly and determining what's best for Jay to be able to compete over here, but then also compete and help the baseball team.
Are there days you back off on what he does in practice because he might pitch that day?
Yes. So at the beginning of the week, We'll talk about his off day. We'll talk about the days that he's going to be available to pitch that they project, and then we'll determine the amount of throws. So in the first week of practice, he was at practice most of the time, but he wasn't throwing the ball because he was going to be available to pitch, that afternoon or that next day. So we would put him through all of the practice, and he'd work his footwork, he'd work his quarterback center exchanges, he'd work his running back exchanges. He just wouldn't throw the ball. This week, because of the way the schedule worked, coming off of NC State and the midweek games, and then Florida State this weekend, we got him for both the practices. So he had up to 40 throws on Tuesday. He had up to 40 throws on Thursday, and we managed those throws. And so we tried to make sure that those throws were heavily leaning towards the competitive stuff versus the defense, so he could get that look and we can get that evaluation.
What's better, his deep ball or his fastball?
Well, he's good at both, but the fastball in football, sometimes you got to take a little bit off, and so that's an area where we're getting him to continue to grow and develop, is just a touch that you got to have with the different throws. But man, he made some deep throws on Thursday. He also made some middle of the field fastball throws where you got to throw it into a tight window with a crosser over the middle of the field. So I'm pleased with his progress thus far.